Welcome back to the Grace Filled podcast, friends. Today we are chatting with Michelle Cushatt. She is a three-time cancer survivor, mother, including biological, step, and foster adopt children. If you haven't noticed, here on the podcast, I love sharing with you the stories of those that have made it through some of life's difficult struggles, and they can give us some tips on how to do it gracefully, grow closer to God, and instead of getting angry with Him. So, our guest today has some practical ways to help us endure even the toughest seasons. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yes, we're so glad to have you here. So, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our friends here online. Many of them might already know you, but for those that don't, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Michelle Cushatt, and you've already said I'm a wife and a mom. I actually have 6 kids, ages 31, 29, 26. It takes me a minute. And the bottom 3 are 16, 16, 16.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know, right? Twins with one that's only 9 months older. So 3 months out of the year, they're the same age. So anyway, so that's my personal life. Live in Colorado. I'm a hiker at heart. Love to read, love to write. Now, from a professional or spiritual perspective, my journey has been one where I was raised in a Christian home, have known Jesus my whole life. However, I had no idea what real life was going to look like ahead in my adult life. And so I had very much an untried, untested faith, and I didn't know it. But my faith, I kind of looked at it as if it was a math equation. If you do all the right things and don't do the wrong things, then God is on the hook to give you the life that you want, right? So as long as you're a good girl and you check all the boxes, then your life is going to go according to plan. And that is not how it works at all. Starting in my early 20s, I started going through a series of significant and unexpected crises and circumstances, everything from unexpected divorce and single motherhood to remarriage and step family, church conflict and splits, raising teenagers. That's its own thing. So I have all kinds of experiences through that we won't go into today. And then when I was about 39 years old, that is when I started my journey with squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue, cancer of the tongue. I had no idea something like that existed. I had no risk factors at all whatsoever. It's usually something that, a 75-year-old man who smokes and drinks gets. And here I was, 39-year-old mom who didn't smoke, rarely had a glass of wine, and did half marathons and triathlons and was super healthy. It made no sense. And so what happened moving forward from that was actually cancer 3 times. It kept coming back, kept having to go through surgeries. Eventually, the last time of which the doctors were not making any guarantees of a cure. They basically gave me 2 weeks to get my affairs in order, put me in the hospital for a 9-hour surgery where they took out 2/3 of my tongue, cut open my neck to take out blood vessels and lymph nodes in my submandibular gland, cut open my arm as well to kind of rebuild my mouth and neck, and then my leg as well. By the time it was all was said and done, I was like Humpty Dumpty. They had taken all the pieces of me apart and put me back together again, and then started external chemotherapy and radiation. And without going into detail, once you start shooting radiation at the face, it's a whole different scenario. And so I had burns on the inside and out from my nose to chest. I had a feeding tube for 6 months. Couldn't do any eating or drinking except through that feeding tube. I had a tracheostomy to keep me from choking. Had to learn how to eat and drink and talk again. It's really quite a miracle. Not only that I'm alive, but the fact that I can speak is I continually amaze my doctors that I show up and do interviews and things like that, because I shouldn't be able to do any of this. But on the backside of all that suffering, and of course, there's been multiple other things in the middle of that, a loss of my dad to pancreatic cancer in the middle of my cancer diagnosis and several other things. Behind all of that, then I'm left with the question that I hear from others all the time. I have prayed and prayed and prayed, God. I have prayed and prayed for healing. I've prayed for relief. I've prayed for an end to my suffering. And no matter how many times I pray, no matter how many years I pray with faith, I still end up with this life that looks very wrong. So what do I do with that? Where do I take that when it comes to the walk of faith? And that's kind of really what the heart of my ministry is all about, is wrestling with these tensions between the reality of life and the substantive quality of faith. How can we have faith in the middle of very real, often very brutal day-to-day life?
Mm-hmm. What an inspiration to just be. For those of you watching on YouTube, I know a lot of you just listen, but I'm just, looking at you. You look so healthy and you're talking, and, what a miracle. And so, how long ago was that
Yeah,
last
yeah.
surgery?
And it is a miracle. That
Yeah.
said, don't let the facade fool you, because there's lots of, this is so important, because I think all of us, we see people online and we see people on stages or on social media or in the public, and we think that they have it all together.
Mhm.
Trust me when I say that I wake up every day and an acute awareness of my absolute dependence on God. So my body does not work very well. It's only lunchtime. I've already had to take a nap because of how it takes so much effort to push through the pain and the real physical challenges to show up and do real life. So I just think that's so important for people to know, that, even though cancer is somewhat in my past, at least for now, I carry the reality of its impact every single minute of every day. So it was my most recent, let's see, I'm right at about 8 years now, cancer-free, which I never thought. After 3 times in 5 years, I never thought I would make it 8 years. So that's fantastic. That said, I still have to go see the doctor, my oncologist, on a regular basis to make sure. So it's one of those types of cancer that I'll probably have to watch for the rest of my life. It's not like I ever just get away from it. It's not like some people have a 5-year mark and they can forget about it and it's in the past. It's kind of something that I just kind of carry along with me on the side.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that story, because it is so intimate. But it is a picture of, God's working too, and what he's
yes.
doing, not just in the physical body. Those of my audience here, most of them know my story, and it's honestly less about the physical piece, although the physical piece was so big and dramatic. So much of it is the mental and the shift in priorities and the
Yeah.
closeness that it brought. So, but it is very vulnerable to share. So I,
Yes.
appreciate you coming on and sharing that.
My
So
pleasure.
life can be hard, and my platform here is all about pursuing the joy and the simple pleasures of God's goodness.
Yes.
But as both of us know, more often than not, it doesn't look like what we wanted. Our
No.
plans, we get to a place in life and we're hitting struggles and fears and disappointments and loss. And it's not really what we planned when we were younger, what our life would look like at that age. So, to our friends here online that are just exhausted, overwhelmed, in the middle of something, whether it's a physical trial like what we've had, or or the other trials that we've had, just raising teenagers,
Yes.
or something with our
Yeah.
parents, we're hit
Yep.
a million different ways. I think Satan is a master at, just trying to knock us down any way he can. Sometimes it's big health scares, and a lot of times it's something tiny, but they build up. For those that are in the middle of that and they're just done and they don't see light at the end of the tunnel, what would you say to them?
Oh, I've been there. I have been to that place where I'm always, people are always surprised when I share this, because I give off the appearance of confidence and strength and all of that. I literally have multiple times in the last 8 years through that last diagnosis, but even as I've been fighting to still live with a body that has a disability now, I have literally come to the end of myself more than once, many times. where I've got nothing left. And so I have so much empathy for that. We do hit a point where we don't have any self-determination left. We just don't have the energy to grit it out anymore, to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and just be tough. There are some seasons and some sufferings that are really beyond human ability. There's that cliche that I hate so much, that God will never give you more than you can handle. That's a load of garbage. It's just not true. Life repeatedly gives us more than we can handle. That is a truth. It's reality. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Well, he wouldn't have said that if life didn't cause us to be weary and heavy laden, right? I mean, so I think we need to remind each other that this life is a mixed bag. It is often more than we can handle, and coming to the end of yourself doesn't mean something is wrong with you. This is so important. We think when we run out of our ability to bootstrap through a circumstance, we need somebody to blame. So we either blame God that he's bad and somehow letting us down, or we blame ourselves for not being strong enough, right? And what if neither one is true? Right? What if suffering is just part of the human experience, unfortunately, and it's something that we all have to wrestle with? So that's the first thing I would say to somebody in that place, is that, there's not something wrong with you simply because you're worn out and done. But the second thing I would think, and this is second thing I would say, and this is the one that is so encouraging to me, is that that we have a God who doesn't sit back and say, well, I told you to come to me, and you made it 12 steps, but I needed you to go 20. So unfortunately, you're going to have to do without. Nope. He finds us where we are. He picks us up and he carries us. It's that whole image of Jesus being the good shepherd. He goes and he finds the sheep, the lost sheep, and carries the one back to the herd, right? This is so critical, because when we fall short, Jesus shows up. Hey, he is the good shepherd. He is the one. I did an interview one time on a radio program, shared my story, and the woman asked me, after sharing my story, she said, so basically what you're saying is that you crawled your way back to faith. And I said, nope, I didn't even have the strength to do that. He came and got me. Okay. And this is so important for all of us to know, that it is not up to you. He is the heavy lifter in this relationship. He is the one that comes and gets you. One of my favorite verses is in John, I think it's John 14:18, where Jesus says, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. Oh, just let that sink in. I will not leave you as orphans. For those who are in that place of being just done, I'm tired of this life. It's too much. That's an orphan place to feel. That's an orphan place to be. You feel alone, you feel abandoned, you feel lost. You're like a child who is orphaned. You have no ability to care for or save yourself. And Jesus says, I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you.
That's
so just
so
trust he's going to show up and do that in some way. I don't know how, but he will. He did it for me. He's going to do it for you.
And that's so powerful. And we get so off track thinking it's about our works and our getting to him. And what a beautiful picture that you paint of he comes to us where we're at. I got goosebumps when you started saying that. It's just such a good picture of how he works over and over and over
and over
in
again.
all these different situations, big or small. You nailed it. That is exactly how he works.
Go ahead. I was just going to go on to, I think as women, we can be pretty high achievers, and we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We feel like it is all up to us. This is an ongoing challenge, that we're the ones that have to work the salvation out, not just for ourselves, but the people we love too, right?
Right. Yes.
And in my Bible, I have a little note card, an index card in my Bible, just quoting Jesus's words on the cross when he said, it is finished. And the word there for finished is, it is complete. In other words, the work is done. And the reason I carry that around is because I'm always trying to finish the work that Jesus started.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always trying to figure out how I can, help him. I'm assisting him, right? I'm going to come alongside and I'm going to help him actually get the job done. And Jesus is like, nope, nope, babe, it is finished. I completed the work. I'm the one who's the God of completion, not you. Philippians, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. That should give all of us, it's kind of scary to relinquish control. At the same time, there is nothing more terrifying than feeling like the weight of everything is on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
it is a beautiful relief, relief to finally realize, guess what? Not only am I not in control, but I don't have to be in control. The best place is for me to not be in control and to let Jesus be in control.
Yes. And he does use those times. I mean, the one time in my life in all of these years that I have honestly can say I was 100% out of control, 100% reliant on God was in the middle of my health scare. And there was nothing a doctor could do. There was nothing a family member, there was no green
Yeah,
shake, there was
nothing.
no workout plan, there was no schedule. It was God or it wasn't. And I wish I could get back to that place because it was just 100% reliance on
Yes.
Him. And I think He uses those times to show us this is what it could be like all the time if you would just let go. Let go and just trust me.
Yes.
And that's, my constant struggle. But I'm so glad you brought that up. So I do have a couple questions for you because our message and our stories are kind of similar with the health scare and struggling. And I get some of these questions a lot. So I would love to get your take on a couple of these. So having been through some of these struggles myself and coming out of it better than before, I mean, God showed up. He was a miracle worker in my situation. And as we mentioned, that is my message, and my platform is completely all about finding the joy in Christ, regardless of your situation. So it could look like a storm and it acts like a storm and it is a storm, but you can find that joy in Christ. And so when I say that a lot, there's new terms coming up, that toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Tell me what the difference is in that, just trusting God and finding joy in Him, regardless of your situation. And then just basically being, having that toxic positivity that's so talked about, especially in our online space here. What's the difference?
Yeah. So, the Bible has all these verses that talk about rejoice always, give thanks in all circumstances, don't be anxious about anything, consider it all joy. We've read all of those verses. You can find those in 1 Thessalonians 5, Philippians 4, James 1. And I am by nature a positive person. I love to be happy. Humor is one of my favorite things. People who know me really well know that I love to laugh and crack jokes and have fun. And in fact, when I was being wheeled into the operating room for my 9-hour surgery, one of the most, I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but one of the things that happened is as they were putting me under anesthesia, I cracked a joke and all 15 people in the operating room just started busting out laughing, because that's what the last thing on my mind before I went under and had my whole body changed was, let's make everybody laugh. So
I love that.
I think that's wonderful. However, it becomes toxic positivity when we stop to acknowledge reality, when we stop acknowledging reality. True Jesus-like joy holds reality, the painful reality, and the future promise in each of our both hands. They go together, right? So that means we tell the truth about our desperate condition. This is so critical. We think of give thanks in all circumstances. That means I need to say, thank you, God, that I've had cancer 3 times. Thank you so much that I have so much pain today. That's not what he's saying. That's just dumb. That's just denial of reality and masochism. That's not helpful to anybody. But I can't say, wow, I have a lot of pain. This body doesn't work. But Jesus, you have a resurrected body waiting for me. And someday when I'm with you, this is going to be made new. And I'm probably going to enjoy my new body more than most people because I know what it's like when it doesn't work. And I can't wait. Right? So that's a giving thanks in all circumstances, not giving thanks for all circumstances. There is a difference between the two. And when it becomes toxic positivity is when, one, either we feel we need to deny our very real and legitimate condition, our real grief and lament, or when we expect somebody else to deny their pain. We go up and let's say you come to me, Lana, and you say, I'm really hurting. My health has been difficult or whatever. And I go, oh, come on, chin up. It's all going to be fine. Okay, that is to be the worst of Job's friends, to not make space for suffering, right? That's toxic positivity. But if you and I can learn to hold current reality and future possibility and promise in each of our two hands, hold them in tandem simultaneously, that becomes the source of true joy. And I've experienced that. There's nothing like it.
That's so good. That's so good. So another thing I hear pretty often that I would love for you to speak to is and I struggle with this too. If God is real and he is good, how can he allow so many bad things to happen? And I've been asked this question by family members, after the loss of someone, or you hear, we're hearing stuff about another school shooting with these little kiddos.
Yes.
How does God allow these things? So what would you speak to that?
Man, this is honestly, I think the question of all questions that we all come to at some point in time in this life. So there's a couple of things that we have to consider. And, the thing is at this point, when we ask this question, we want a black and white answer, but I'm going to push against that because even though we think we want reasons, we want answers, I don't think that's what we really want. Because if we could unravel the magnitude and mystery of God, he would be a God that's far too small. He would be human if we could understand him. So at some level, we need to not have answers to why he does what he does or doesn't do what he does, simply because by nature, by character, that makes him a God big enough to believe in and trust. Okay. The moment we can unravel something, it becomes small and actually we devalue it. So there is a real security in the magnitude and mystery of a God that we can't figure out. So I want to at least acknowledge that. Two, another consideration is we also must accept the fact that there are some evils that we are culpable for, right? Like you just mentioned the shooting at the time of this recording that happened today. There is human evil that perpetrated that pain. And that's part of our human condition, that we are responsible for some of the pain that we experience. Now, I'm not saying that means I'm responsible for my cancer. By the way, side note, I always get people who email me and let me know that if I would stop eating chocolate, I wouldn't get cancer again.
Oh, no. No.
I'm like, but my quality of life would be gone. So let's
Right.
not talk about that.
Oh my goodness.
But we want to point at every pain that's having evil. That's not what I'm saying. But there are some things that happen that are a result of human depravity. And we have to acknowledge that. That is just true. Then the third consideration when it comes to this question, so not only the magnitude and mystery of God, which is actually a security, right? Two, human depravity, which is also the source of our pain. But the final one is that we must consider that our definition of what is good and what is bad may not be ultimate. This is hard. This is hard, okay? But that our definition of what is good and what is bad may not be the ultimate, right? So for example, for me, the ultimate worst thing that could happen to me was for cancer to come back. After I was diagnosed the first time, my whole existence centered around trying to prevent myself from getting it again, right? That's why we did all the treatments, the surgeries, everything, because we didn't want cancer to come back. So to me, the worst case scenario was cancer coming back. Even worse than that would be losing my ability to taste and eat and speak and swallow because my ministry involves talking. Just my existence involves connecting in relationship, which happens through speech. So here I am, having had it 3 times now. Now, it didn't just come back once, but came back twice. My taste, my speech, my ability to function has been significantly altered. And what is interesting to me is that that the ministry that God has birthed from my broken body has come not in spite of my suffering, but a direct result of it.
Mm-hmm.
So although it's painful, is it really the worst thing that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
You see how
Mm-hmm.
now we may not always be able to see that this side of heaven. I'm thinking of some of my friends, like a friend who lost a child. That's not the place to sit there and try to figure out what good can come of that right now. You can just mourn. That's heartbreaking. That's a loss. But I can tell you in my own life, what I thought was the worst thing that could happen, the thing that would devastate me, ended up becoming the thing that developed me and saved me in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
I think of Jesus, the crucifixion. When Jesus died on that Good Friday, all of his followers thought that was the worst that could happen. They thought he was the Messiah. They literally thought his death was the end of the road. I mean, it could not get any worse. And as it turns out, what they defined as bad turned out to be the absolute good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so allowing ourselves to understand, or at least to consider the fact that our definitions of what's good or bad may not be ultimate. At some point in time, and this is true for all of us, our prayers for healing will not be answered the way we want them to. 100% for every one of us. Sooner or later, I'm going to have a circumstance that I won't heal from, whatever it may be. It could be old age, it could be a car accident, it could be cancer again, we don't know. Does that mean God's bad? Does that mean that he can't be trusted? Right? So at some, as we wrestle with this, what really it comes down to is our trust in an outcome, or is our trust in a person? If our trust is in an outcome, it's hit or miss. You may or may not get the outcome you want. If your trust is in a person, the one who promised and said, I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you. The one who said, behold, I will make all things new. The one who said, I am coming. I am coming for you. If our trust is in a person, then we will not be disappointed.
That's so good. And as you're talking, I just keep thinking back to the Old Testament where over and over and over again, like it felt like it was every other scripture. I know it wasn't, but in one book of the Bible, over and over, there's this bad situation, and then he's ending it with the phrase, so they will know that I'm God. Yes. So they will know that I'm God.
Yes.
With this bad situation is happening. So when I save them from it, they will know that I'm God, over and like, I don't know, 60, 70 times in one book in the Bible. It's that. And I was just like, wow, he really wants us to know that.
Yes, he does. I mean, John 17, what is it? John 17:3. This is the eternal life, that you would know the one true God and Jesus Christ whom he has sent. This is eternal life, to know him. That's it.
That's it. That's it. If we can get that, we've got it, right?
And I have to, kind of like you shared earlier, I mean, it's easy to say this in a tiny interview, but I want to give the context. I have literally wept till I thought I had no more tears left. I have agonized. I have asked God why over and over again. And we're not talking just for a few months or during a season. For the last 30 years, I have had loss after loss after loss, and they're continuing even today. Okay. I'm going through some really hard stuff even now, not cancer related, but equally as devastating. So this is not, Michelle had a hard couple of months or even a hard couple of years. We're talking decades of walking out suffering. Okay. I can tell you, if God had come to me, and if he come to me and said, Michelle, if he had, 30 years ago, the next 30 years are going to be brutal. There are going to be times where you're going to despair of life. You're going to really not know what's up from down. You're going to question your faith. You're going to wrestle with that. But you are going to experience me in a way you've never experienced me before. What would I have said? I would have said, okay,
I'll take it.
I'll take it. Right. I've had people ask me now, if you could go back, would you change anything? And although I'll say this very clearly, I never want to have that kind of physical suffering again. It was awful. I never want to. I am not a glutton for punishment. I have no desire to experience that pain again. And yet at the same time, I would not give up the intimacy that I have experienced with the reality of Jesus for anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't every day, all the time. It was glimpses here and there, but those glimpses were so sweet and so real that I wouldn't trade them for anything.
Right. That's so powerful. And it is one of those, something that just happened this past week that I only shared with my husband. But when you've experienced one of those situations where you just know God is all over this and it really stinks, it doesn't look good from the outside, but God is all over it. That intimacy is better than anything. And when you start to see yourself go into another situation, I had a little, it wasn't even a scare, but I had an appointment and I had put it off for 5 years. And the last 5 years ago, it was kind of a sketch, kind of thing. And they said, come back every 6 months. And here I am 5 years later. So, so I'm sitting there getting ready to go in and I'm a little nervous and I'm a little mad at myself for like, why did I had COVID hit, I was late and then COVID hit and how things go. And then I had brain tumor and bigger stuff fish to fry. And so, but I'm sitting there getting ready to go into the scan, kind of angsty because it's not going to be good. Because it kind of wasn't last time. And then now I'm 5 years later, why did I, I'm mad at myself. And I'm having this conversation with God, like, you know what, God, what are we going to do here? Is this going to be bad, like the brain tumor and all that? And if it is, I'm here for it. I mean, I don't want that. I don't, I'd rather come out of here happy and go about my day and hang out with my grandbaby tonight and have a good report. But if you're going to take me there, I know you're going to do something really good with it. And I'm not going to like it. I am here. Your way is so much better than my way. And I can see, having this last situation, how you flipped it around, showed your glory in it, and used that as a part of my story. If that's where you want to take me, I don't want to go there, but if that's where you're going to take me, I'm here. I trust you 100%. And I can honestly say, I'm in my, mid 50s now. I've never felt that peace, like, bring it on, whatever you have for me.
Exactly.
As long as you're here with me, God, I can take it. And, I haven't shared that with anybody but my husband. And I'm so glad I'm finally there. And, give me another situation, I won't be there. I won't be trusting.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the process of building those spiritual faith muscles, right? It took the hard circumstance for you to wrestle through to a place where you could say, I trust you.
Yeah.
You could not have gotten there without the pain and suffering, unfortunately. There's no other way.
Right.
Comfort and ease don't produce results. Resistance does.
Right.
And so if we want to build up and create a faith that will not fail, we have to be willing to walk out the hard things. It is the hard things that helps us have the faith that will not fail. And I think that's what we all want. We want the kind of faith that is strong.
Yes.
Well, just like you can't get strong without going and lifting weights and pulling against resistance. Your faith is not going to develop unless it faces resistance too. And so I love the wisdom in what you shared, and how the second challenge was really buoyed by the first one.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
It's just like the story of Joshua, where, if God's done this before, he'll do it again. And he had them set up the altar stones. So that way, when they brought their children, they could say, this is what the Lord did for us.
Yes.
And it would build up generations of faith.
It's like a timeline. It's like a timeline that we need to tell our kiddos about. And I mean, I will say, I walked out of there knowing results. Everything was fine. I was like, oh, I didn't expect to get these results for, a couple days or whatever. And it all ended up fine. But I was just, it's just knowing that I can honestly say, regardless of how I walked out of there, what they told me, I honestly was good with it, and I have never in my whole life been in that place. And so I'm thankful for my
Yeah.
first round of struggles
Yep.
that I can rely on
And
him.
you will keep building because,
Yes.
as long as you live, there will be more struggles. It's just the way it works, right?
Right,
But
right.
this is what, so many times in the Old Testament, God told his people, do not forget,
Hmm.
do not forget what the Lord has done for you. I think Exodus 33 might talk about it anyway, but do not forget. And that's so critical because we must reflect on the past faithfulness of God to draw new strength for the current reality that requires the faithfulness of God.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
What's so powerful is that in that moment, while you were doing the scan, you chose not to numb yourself from it, but to actually wrestle with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important word for all of us, that when we face those moments of fear, we want to escape. And in our current reality, there are so many options for escape, right?
Right, right.
And certainly it's okay to do that sometimes. But sometimes what we need to do is actually sit with the discomfort and wrestle it and tell ourselves, nope, I trust you, God. I trust you, God.
Hmm. Yes, that's so, so good, so good. So we have, all of us have these people in our life, and their faith is just failing, and
Mhm.
they're not growing, and they might even be completely rejecting it. How do we offer more help to them and not do that? I think our tendency in the church is just to be kind of preachy pants and holier than thou and throw everything we've got at them. What do you suggest we do if we have a close friend or family member
Yeah.
that is failing in their faith?
It's such a good question. And being that I've been someone who has wrestled with my faith, I know what felt good to me and what didn't.
Mhm. Right.
I think it's so important, and you already hinted at this, for us to remember that it is that our tendency is to feel like we need to defend the gospel, that we need to defend it and provide a whole list of reasons why they're crazy for wrestling with their faith.
Mhm.
But before we defend the gospel, we need to embody it.
Yes.
And embodying the good news of Jesus is that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us,
Mhm.
right? While we were yet rejecting him, he showed up in love,
Mhm.
right? That's what our job is to embody the gospel, which means we sit in those places of questions with the people who are there. We
Mhm.
don't try to solve it for them. We don't try to tell them how wrong they are. Quite honestly, when people are wrestling with faith, what's behind that is extraordinary pain.
Mhm.
And if we try to throw scripture verses without acknowledging their deep pain, we have really missed their true wound,
Mhm.
right? They're bleeding out, they have an amputation, and we're just trying to get them to eat a salad. That's not going to work.
Mhm.
We got to address the bleeding wounds, right? And sometimes all they need for us to do is to simply say, I am so sorry for your suffering.
Mhm.
And then to say, it makes sense to me why you would be wrestling right now. It makes sense to me. I
Mhm.
get it.
Mhm.
Right? You are dealing with some really hard circumstances. And I don't, like you, I don't understand why God does what he does or doesn't do what we want him to do. I get it. It makes sense to me. I am here. I'm just going to be with you and love you in this place. And if you ever want to talk through it, I'm happy to do that too. But right now, I'm just going to sit with you in your suffering.
Mhm. That's so good. That's so good. So,
So, and let me just go on from that too. So not only embodying the gospel rather than defend it, but a couple things to keep in mind is talk less, not more.
mm,
Usually when people pose their questions, they're not looking for answers. They're looking for somebody to hold their questions with tenderness,
that's
right?
good.
Uh, Always start with empathy. Uh, don't rush to fix. This is an important point. Our need to answer the questions and fix the problem is more about our discomfort, not their pain.
Mm. Oh, that's truth right there. Yes.
Okay. So when we talk too much, we need to understand those are indicators that we're uncomfortable, not that we care about their suffering. All right. So talk less, Ask kind questions. What do you need most right now?
Mhm.
Start with empathy, lead with empathy, create safe space for their questions and suffering, validate their experience,
Mhm.
be open to what they need, obviously open if they want to have a conversation. But your job is not to fix their suffering, but to sit with them in it.
Mhm. Mhm. And so many times too, um, meeting a physical need that has nothing to do with with
Yeah,
their struggle and with faith, you know,
a
bring
casserole
them a
goes a long
oh
way.
yeah, bringing them a plate of cookies or, you
Yeah,
know, doing a chore for them at their house. You know, a lot of times it's feeling the love. They can see that love of Christ, you know,
yeah,
through
yes,
you. And we do as Christians, we always think we have to be so intellectual and come up with these scriptures. And sometimes it's just showing them some very simple,
yes.
basic love.
I had a couple friends that would just fly in and just sit with me on the couch. I was so
Oh,
sick that I couldn't move, and most of the time couldn't talk or do anything. Like I was just a blob. They would fly in and simply sit there.
mm,
At times, because I had so many burns, my vocal cords didn't work or anything. I'd have to communicate with the dry erase board, and I would ask hard questions. Why isn't God relieving some of my pain? I'm in so much pain. Why won't he relieve it?
mhm.
I was on fentanyl for 6 months. That gives you an idea of the extreme
Wow.
nature of my pain. Fentanyl and liquid morphine for 6 months. And I would ask these questions. I didn't need them. Trust me, I knew the scripture. I didn't
Mhm.
need them to quote Bible verses. I needed them to just sit with me there as I wrestled through it.
Mhm. Oh, that's such a good picture for us that sometimes it's just being in your presence.
Just
Uh,
sitting, yeah,
yeah,
just choosing to show up.
yeah, I
Being
love
grown up enough and mature enough and secure enough in your faith that you don't need to say anything.
that. Right. And that, so, you know, my next question is talking about the church in general, but the picture that you just painted for us of your friends, they're the church.
That's the
That's what the
church.
church is
Yes.
supposed to be doing. And, you know, so many times we've been let down by the church, by church
Mhm.
leaders or drama, or we see these big, you know, stories in the
Yeah.
media of sin and that type of that thing. For those that are just over the church and haven't had a good experience, or they've gone through a struggle and someone's hitting them over the head with scriptures and they just wanted someone to sit and love on them, what would you say to them that we have this persona out there that we're hypocrites and we're holier than thou and we don't, you know, we don't show true love. What would you say
Mhm.
to someone that's skeptical about the church right now that's
Yeah.
been hurt by them?
Well, I've been there too. I've gone through way too much church drama, so I get it.
Hmm.
And it's very tempting to want to self-protect, and that's certainly an option, right? To just shut down all relationships.
Right.
However, I want you to back up a little bit and think about the wisdom of that. For example, and this is going to sound a little bit trite, so hang with me, but uh, let's say I love cheeseburgers, right? I love cheeseburgers. I want a really good cheeseburger. I'm hungry right now, by the way, just so you know. So I want a cheeseburger, but I go and get one time and it's really a bad cheeseburger. I'm not going to get rid of all cheeseburgers just because it's a bad cheeseburger,
Right.
right?
Right.
You can take this metaphor in multiple different ways. The reality is that the church is made up of humans, and humans are wounded and broken, and they're suffering unbelievable things, and they behave poorly. It happens. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's not okay. And there are times we just need to call it out and hold people accountable because it's not okay. The church is Jesus's bride. That is the bride, and we should be treating her differently. We should be caring for each other differently. But to throw out the entire church because of the misbehaving of a portion of them makes about as much sense as saying I'm never going to eat a cheeseburger again because I had a bad one.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. On top of that, and this is where it's so critical for us to understand this. I had a counselor tell me this one time. What is wounded in relationship can only be healed in relationship.
Mm.
So at some point you need to decide, do you want to live with this church wound for the rest of your life?
Mm.
Now, if you just want to carry around an open wound for another few decades, then by all means, just lock yourself down and pull yourself up and nurse that wound. But if you want healing, the healing is going to come through the very mechanism that caused it. Relationship. That doesn't mean you go back to an abusive relationship. It doesn't mean you go back to a toxic church. But if you want to heal from that, you got to be open to allowing God to heal you through a new experience that is different than the one that caused you so much pain. What's wounded in relationship can only be healed in relationship.
That's so
You
good.
have to decide.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So you have a new book out.
I do.
And for those of you that are listening here, yeah, we have those. It's so beautiful, beautiful
We're book
cover,
twins.
beautiful message inside. So give us a quick rundown because it's full of practical steps. So give us a quick, overview of what it is.
Yeah, so it's called A Faith That Will Not Fail, 10 Practices to Build Up Your Faith When Your World is Falling Apart. My aim with this book, so I've been writing about faith and suffering for years and years and years, but my aim with this book was to make it as tangible, practical, and accessible as possible to the average person that either has no church background or is in the middle of a really hard place where they are, like you said at the beginning, I'm done. I got nothing left. So the idea being it's broken into these 10 practices. There are 5 chapters for each practice. So that means 50 chapters in this tiny little book, which means they're tiny chapters. They're only a couple pages long. You can do them in about 5 minutes. So when you don't have the strength to bootstrap yourself anymore, this book is kind of a go-to resource to give you a nugget of something to have some hope in. If you feel like I just need something to help me get through today, I wanted this book to be the way to be able to have one way to add one more brick of faith into your life. And eventually you will have this wonderful foundation of faith over time as you build it a brick at a time.
Yeah, so good. So good. And I have someone in mind as I'm, going through it that I think it would be good for too. So
that's the other takeaway.
Plate of cookies with it. I'm not just going to hit them over the head with it. But I think this could be such a good, powerful gift to someone that is struggling in that moment as you're bringing them a meal or whatever it is that you're doing for them. As they have, after you leave and they have some steps here that they can dig into and, see some, I like that it's practical. So many times we're kind of up here in the heady space and it's trust on God and lean into him. And we all say that, but like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And I love that your book really gives some practical steps there.
That was my hope. It's what I needed. So when I spent the better part of a year on the couch, going on to recover, right? And I didn't have the energy to do 3-hour Bible studies. I didn't have even the mental stamina because of the suffering, I just needed something that kept pointing me to the fact that it's okay. You can trust, you can hope. Here's some, and I also wanted to hear from somebody that knew suffering. I didn't want to hear from somebody that had this nice, neat, perfect life. I needed to hear from somebody that knew what it was like to be in excruciating pain. And that's what I'm hoping, that this is kind of companionship, camaraderie from somebody who gets it, as well as just really practical, bite-sized ways to deepen and grow your faith wherever you are.
I love it. I love it. So your book is coming out. Give us the date and where they can get it.
Yes. So it releases on March 28th. And as I know, some people have already received early shipments of it. But at that point in time, it's available anywhere books are sold. You can get it at Target, at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, christianbook.com, Parable. I mean, basically any place where books are sold, you can find it. I also recorded it on the audiobook, my own voice. So if you want to hear me talking about these things myself, the audiobook, a lot of people enjoy that because it's kind of a way for us to sit down together and walk through your hard season together, arm in arm.
Yes. And hear the miracle that you're even talking.
That I'm even talking, which is
I mean, we're witnessing a miracle right there. I love it. I love it. So where can our friends find you online? What social media is your favorite right now?
Instagram and Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Instagram. Those are the 2 places where I spend the most time. I have a bunch of free videos on YouTube. You can go there and find those videos. I also have tons of free resources on my website. I'm all about resourcing people in places of pain. And so you can go to michellecushatt.com and find links to all of it. But I'd say find me on Instagram. You can find some videos and links and all kinds of fun stuff there. So
Wonderful. Well, we'll add the links to your social media and to your book here in our show notes. Thank you, Michelle, for coming on. This has just
it's a
been pure
pleasure.
joy to chat with you, and just I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, and what an inspiration you are. So thank you, and best of
Thank you,
luck
my
to you
friend.
on your book coming out. I love it.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right. Thanks.